Welcome to our panel about wigs. Here, waiting from Cowbutt. Crunchies will tell us a little bit about wig making and tips and tricks and everything. So, yeah, just enjoy your time and let's go.
Alright. Hi, you guys. I am one half of Cowbutt Crunchies Cosplay. I am Regan. As she mentioned, this panel is going to be in English, so if I say something that is confusing or that you need me to repeat or rephrase, just raise your hand and ask. Honestly, if you have any questions as we go along, just raise your hand and ask anyway. Don't feel like you have to wait till the very end, and I'll try and address any questions that you guys have. So what we're really going to be going over in this panel is less beginning techniques for wig making and more extreme techniques for wig making. So this would be how to make a wig that is really larger than life. This is the kind of wig that I personally really love making. I love making stuff like this that just looks really, really weird and is impossible to make with real hair. That's kind of my specialty. And when I make a wig like this, really the core building block that I use is something called understructure. So that's a lot of what we're going to be talking about today, how to build up the volume of wigs like this and make things that are larger than life. So usually you need to have kind of at least a very basic understanding of how wigs work. And kind of along those lines, who here considers themselves an intermediate wig maker? Like you're a little bit comfortable, but you want to get more comfortable with making wigs? Okay. Who considers themselves a very, very beginner with wig making? Okay. And who considers themselves advanced? Anyone? Okay. Well, then I get to talk a lot about cool wig stuff. So these techniques, I would say, are a little more intermediate, but that's not to say that beginners can't use them. I think they're very important building blocks for a lot of different styles. So the main thing, again, is in order to make a wig that is larger than life, we need some volume inside of the wig to make that wig very large. My normal hair would never be able to do something like this, so I need something inside of it. And we can increase that volume either with hair, or we can increase that volume with using something not hair, like something like foam, which is what this particular wig is made out of. This is not hair. But a lot of styles, it's wonderful to increase the volume with hair, and a lot of the way that we can do that is with either teasing or with just simply increasing the amount of hair in the wig. Teasing is a lot of what we're going to go over in this particular session because we only have about an hour or so. And I think it's a really good beginner technique, to be honest, because it's fast and it's pretty easy to understand. I consider foam work a more advanced technique. So if you need to make something very large, I think teasing and spiking is a really great style to start with to get more familiar with advanced wig making. So again, we want lots of volume, and with spikes and teasing, that means lots of hair to start with. If you've ever flipped a wig inside out, you can see all these little rows of fabric and fiber attached, and we call that a weft. And the more of these wefts and fiber you have inside of the wig, the thicker your wig becomes. I have been told that it's actually hard to get Arta wigs here, which is unfortunate because that's normally what I recommend, because their wigs, this is actually an Epic Cosplay wig, but these brands of wigs come with lots and lots and lots of hair. You have tons of these little rows. But you know, even if you're not starting with that wig, even if you get a wig off of Amazon or eBay, that's okay because you can add these. And the more you add, the thicker your hair is going to become, and the more of that hair you have to increase the volume. When you spike, I personally always like to start with a very thick wig. The danger of starting with a thin wig is, yes, you can tease it, but it gets really ratty. Or if you don't tease it, it gets really stringy. Like, I don't know if any of you guys have been cosplaying for a really, really long time, but do you remember, like, 15 years ago, you'd see, like, Dragon Ball Z cosplayers back when none of us knew anything about wigs, and they'd have, like, one spike that's really thin, and just, like, kind of sticking off, and another one, like, sticking off really thin and spaghetti-like. That's because there's not enough hair in the wig, and it compresses really, really thin. So when we want volume, we want quantity of wefts, because then we have a material to tease up and create our understructure. So one way to get these wefts is we can harvest them off of another wig. So if you've got 2 of these, like I go on eBay, I buy 2 wigs, and they come and they're thin, that's fine. I can take all of the wefts off of wig number 1 and attach them to wig number 2. These wefts are really just sewn into place, and so if I want to harvest them and take them for my other wig, it's a little bit hard to see from where you guys are, but this is just sewn right onto the elastic. You see right here where it's attached? And because it's just sewn, I can take my seam ripper and just rip it right off, and then I end up with a nice little weft. So if I seam rip this bad boy, sorry, this is a very bad angle, just kind of pop it in there. Make sure that you are ripping where it's sewn to the netting. There's actually 2 rows. One place is where the hair is sewn to this little fiber right here. Don't rip that, because then your fiber will come out. You rip it where this was sewn onto the wig netting. And see now, this is detached. And if I just keep seam ripping it, I can pull this entire weft right off of the wig. I'm going to actually just rip it right off. And so then I'm left with a little weft. And I can take this, I could take many hours and take all of these off of this wig and then attach it to my other wig. And then it will become twice as thick. And then once you have a twice as thick wig, you have a lot more hair, it's a lot thicker. And then when you spike it, it almost wants to stay by itself because there's so much hair in place. Have any of you guys ever wefted a wig like that?
Yeah. Yeah, and I have a question.
Yeah.
Because I bought extra wefts in a different color, and I sew it into my wig. And I think I did something wrong because it looked really unnatural. It looked like it's about to rip off, and I even sew it on the elastic, and I don't know what I did wrong.
So the question is, she sewed on wefts in a different color and it looks really unnatural. When you say it looks like it's about to rip off, is it not secure or the color looks strange?
I think it was not completely secure, but I hand sew it into the elastic.
Okay. So there's a couple ways to attach these wefts. Way number 1 is sewing it. If it didn't feel secure, perhaps it wasn't tight enough. To be honest, I actually tend to not sew my wefts. I am a lazy human being, and I don't want to sew my wefts into the wig. And so what I will actually do is, a lot of times I will use a clear glue, like tacky glue or Pattex, something with a little bit of stretch. I have been in such a hurry that I have used hot glue in the wig. Do not recommend, but it does technically work if you have to. The tacky glue is not as secure, so if you are worried about security, that might not be the best method, but you will save a lot of time if time is important. Sewing, I would say make sure that your stitches were tight enough. I've usually only sewn to the crown, which does not stretch. You might have had a problem if it's on the elastic, not being super tight. Yeah. Yeah, I would just make sure it's tight, or use tacky glue also if it doesn't feel super secure. But once you have added all of these fibers, we're going to end up with a wig that's really, really thick. I like to start with a thick wig like Arda or Epic because then I don't need to weft it in. But I know that's not really available very, very readily here. So if you start with a shorter wig or a smaller wig, just add some more fiber. It'll make your life a lot easier later on. So once we have our really thick wig to begin with, we want to pin it onto our wig form. And the reason I want to do this is because I'm going to be pulling on the wig a lot. And also, these forms, this is not the size of my head. This is a lot smaller than my head. So I want to stretch the wig down a little bit to avoid accidentally making a style that won't actually fit on my head later on. And we can do this with just a couple pins into place. I like the pins with the big ball on them. I think it's a lot easier to find when I need to take it back out. All right, but see, with a wig that's this thick, it already kind of wants to stay up by itself because the hair is pushing against itself. The other reason I really like Arda, not to keep talking about Arda, but I will continue to talk about Arda because I use their wigs a lot because they are not shiny. They're made with a particular type of fiber that's very rough and very coarse. It's got a lot of tooth to it, and that tooth makes the hair not want to slide against itself. This wig is from Epic Cosplay. It's wonderfully thick, but it's kind of shiny. You see the shine in this fiber here? And as a result, the hair is slicker and thinner, and it does rub against itself a lot easier. This is wonderful for really long styles that you don't want to tangle. It's not as good for short styles because we really want to tangle that fiber. So with Arda, it does start a little easier, but that's not to say that we can't tangle this fiber. We just have to put a little bit more effort into it to make that fiber coarse and not slick any longer. So for teasing, when I make big spikes, I now prefer to tease it up. Again, I think it's faster. I think it's a lot easier for beginners to understand. Foam work is a lot trickier to get right the first time. So if you want to make a big, crazy shape or a big spike, this is what I would make your volume out of. Hair rather than foam, like this. My new favorite way to make a big spike is actually to set aside some of the outer hair for later. When I make a big spike, even though we have added a lot of this hair, it's, not staying up, it's not staying spiked. And I could take this and spray the heck out of it, and yeah, it'll stay up for a little while. But glue is not permanent. This does come off with time and heat, and if I drop it on the floor, I am in big trouble. So when I style, I like my primary hold to be physical. And that could be me tangling up the fiber. That could be me putting in some kind of foam. But I want a physical hold before I even start with the glue. And then the glue is kind of my secondary hold. And I find that that's a lot stronger, and that means that my style's not going to fall out, and I can be rough with it, and I don't need to worry about transporting it. So, to get that physical hold, we're going to tease this wig a lot. Teasing is wonderful. Teasing is a great physical hold because we are kinking up the fiber, and we're tangling the fiber together, and then it's going to stay locked in that shape. But it's kind of ugly, and we don't want the outside to look teased, or it's going to be not very pretty to look at. So instead, I'm going to take the outermost bit of hair, the stuff that's actually visible that you're going to see, and I'm going to set it aside. And we don't want to touch this stuff, because this is our nice, pretty, silky hair that we're going to save for later. So we're just going to set that aside and clip it, and we're not going to touch it. All right. This is the meat of my spike. This is my favorite thing in the world. This is called a teasing brush. I used to use a teasing comb. That works fine, but honestly, this thing is like €6. It's super cheap. It's super easy to use. It's really dense. I think it's also called a porcupine brush. Does anyone know what this is called in German? What this thing is?
Yeah.
Buy one. Give Amazon your money and buy one. Because this is great because it teases really well. It's also really thick, and so when I put it into the hair, it only goes a couple layers deep. And so it's great for smoothing out that top layer of hair. Like if I've over-teased, I can comb just the top back out without affecting the inside. And it also means that it's not going to get caught in the inner layers because I'm only going a couple layers deep. So I'm going to make let's make a big kind of spike shape in the middle. And let's make it do something weird. Let's make it a weird curly Q kind of shape like this. So this is what I want to end up with. Who here does not know how to tease hair? Awesome. Yay. Good. All right. So we're going to start with teasing the base of the wig. And I'm just back combing. The base is the most important part because this is where most of the weight is going to be. So always make sure that you have a good tease on the base before you get up to the top. I'm also starting on the inside, just because again, this brush does not penetrate very deep. So make sure you get to the inside before you move to the outside of the tease. But, as we can see, I am just tangling up the hair. It's kind of all knotting together to get that nice physical hold I want, and when I have done too much, I'm going to just smooth the outside out just a little bit with this comb. And then I'm going to continue. So I will tease a wig roughly 3 times before it's finished. The first thing I'm doing is actually not just to make the spike. I'm going to take this entire thing out in just a second. The reason I am teasing is to tangle up the fiber. This is creating a kind of kinked texture. The hair is no longer straight. It's all knotted together, and that texture is what's going to give me volume. Because when something is really straight and it falls kind of flat against itself, it's really thin and it's not very voluminous. If it's all kinked up like this, you've got a lot of air between it, and the hair does not want to sit straight on itself, and it's just a lot more, it's got a lot more volume to it. And that volume is what's going to make our spike look nice and thick, and not like our skinny little Dragon Ball Z spike that we used to see. See what it's doing? This is standing up with none of this, and that's because the fiber is tangled together. This is cool. I could leave it like that, I guess, but we're not going to. Instead, what we're going to do is we're going to maintain this kinked texture by heat setting it. When we heat our wig with the blow dryer, we're making the hair remember its kinked texture. Again, hair is plastic, and so we heat it up. It's going to harden in this kinked texture, and it's going to remember that even when I take it out of this tease. Does anybody have any questions while we're doing this? Yes?
I just would like to know, I guess the hair is quite good to tease it, right? And is there any trick if the wig, like the hair is quite of, like this slippy or so?
Yes, so if the hair is really slippery or shiny, is there a trick to teasing it? The trick is you will probably need to tease it and untease it, do what we're doing. You might have to do that in extra time. The other trick is if you spray it a little bit with hairspray or Got2b first, that gives it a little bit of a grip. And so it will be a lot, it'll almost mimic that kind of rough, toothy texture. So just a quick spritz of hairspray all throughout it, and then start your tease. That should help you a little bit as well. Yes?
So, with the second question, if you spritz the hairspray, it also penetrates just maybe 1 or 2 layers. And if you want to have a really thick spike, how would you approach it to make sure that every single hairspray is covered with that stuff?
So for the hairspray trick, that's just to help you get started. If you want, what I usually do is I will kind of open up the hair like this and try just be kind of natural with it. And this doesn't get every single hair, but it gets a lot of them. And that will help you a lot. All right. So when we blow dry, we heat it up, we let it cool. That's why I have not yet taken it out. Unlike with human hair, the plastic needs to harden and set. And so you don't want to start your restyling until the hair is totally cooled down. If I were to untangle it while it was still warm, all of that nice kink, I would be straightening it back out. All right, but this is cool, so we can go ahead and uncomb this. So I am untangling the fiber, but my hair is still in that kinky texture that we created. Any other questions while I am doing this? No? All right. And make sure you get the middle as well, because don't forget that we teased that up too. All right. So we are no longer teased, but as you guys can see, this is already a lot of hair. If anyone wants to come up closer, they can look as well. But it's kind of ratted up a little bit. It looks kinky, and it's huge. Here's the part that's not teased, how silky and smooth and small that is. Here is the part that is teased. And so we've created a lot of volume that we can now put into our spike. I will normally do this 3 times. I will tease it once, comb it back out, tease it a second time, comb it back out, and then I will spike for real and leave it in that kink texture to help hold its structure. Just for the sake of time, I'm not going to do it a second time. I'm going to start right on my spike instead. But the more times you do this, the bigger your volume gets. So if you have to start with a really thin wig, you can make up for that thinness by just teasing a whole bunch. Now you run the risk of it getting kind of not nice to look at, getting more kinked, but the teasing will help counteract how thin a wig is. So we're going to just start this again. Again, tease up the middle if you can, and actually I'm going to use a Logotsubi as well to help hold that structure in the middle. So roots and the middle first. The roots are going to be our main structure. And this is a lot easier now that I've already kinked up the hair. Questions while I am doing this? Anyone else? Any projects that you guys are working on, actually? Anyone need to do big spikes for anything soon? Yeah, what are you working on?
On Momoko from Namaka, and she has a huge hairstyle with so many spikes, I don't know how I should even keep it on my head.
Oh my god. So speaking of huge hairstyles, this kinking up of the hair is also really good for characters who, even if it's not a spike or a single hair shape, if they've just got big hair like Hermione or like Jasper from Steven Universe, this is a great way to increase the volume of a wig without necessarily making it really heavy by putting in like 4 wigs or something like that. So this is just a good way to make a wig look a lot thicker. All right, so again, we are keeping our shape because the hair is tangled together. For a spike, I would just keep on going. But the cool thing about this method is you can make whatever shape you want. I made a wig recently of Squirtle, and it has these big curly cues. And this is the same kind of method I used. The cool thing about teasing is when you hold the hair in the direction you want it to go, and I tease kind of in that direction, I'm kinking the hair in that particular direction, and the hair is then going to want to stay there. Glue will help me, but I can get the start of the physical shape. So if I hold the hair in this backwards curl, it kind of wants to stay by itself. And again, that's because I'm holding it this way as I tease. So, cool. There we go. This is a great wig. I'm done. It's perfect. No, it's not. It's terrible. So, physical hold, secondary hold. The glue is going to help lock that in place and make it a lot nicer looking. It's hard to get the ends, honestly. You always need glue for that. But we're going to spray. And I know we don't have any beginners here, but when I was a beginner, I started using Got2b, and it didn't work for me. And I was like, am I stupid? Why is it not working? It works for every other cosplayer in the world. And I realized that what was happening was I was spraying it, and then I was just like leaving it alone. And then it would fall out of place. And what you need to do is you need to immediately harden it with the hairdryer, and that is what gives it its strength as well. Make sure you spray the base a lot, and then make sure you spray the tip a lot especially. just stick up a little more. Okay, so we've got a thing going on. I don't know what this is, but something's happening here. So cool, we've got a shape. Its shape's staying up pretty well by itself, but it's really not nice to look at. It's all ratty, it's all kinky, it's all texturized, and this is why we set aside our nice pretty hair at the very beginning, because this is our understructure. This is what's giving us volume. It's just hair, but this is still our volume. And so that's going to be hidden on the inside, just like we might hide foam or some other type of structure with a different wig. So I'm going to unpin my nice pretty hair. I'm going to comb it a little bit because it got all weird. Got to be where I want the hair to go. And then I'm going to lay the hair a little bit at a time. I used to try and do everything at once, and that's just a bad idea. Just be patient. Don't be like me. And then we're going to spray on the top as well. Ooh, I'm good at using a hairdryer. All right, and then the next piece, we're just going to continue laying the hair and hiding any of that kinked texture. And again, guys, let me know if you have any questions at all while I do this, because I hope this is at least interesting to watch in silence. Anyone? No? Yes?
I have a question. How would you do side cuts or something like it, this with when you have really short hair?
Like an undercut?
Yeah, I'm not.
Do you need like a big spike and then the undercut is under it? Or is this like for small spikes?
Not really spikes. It's like just side cuts and something.
Oh, a big thing on the top? So if the sides are cut and all your hair is on the top, add more hair. Just weft in 2 or 3 times as much hair, and then you'll have all the volume up top to do this with. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay, good. Just wanted to make sure. Yeah, just if you need more hair, just add more hair. Just steal it from another wig. All right. So we won't do the bottom of this.
Okay, but
Yes.
if you would do the bottom of it, I just heard that some of my friends sometimes have problems with getting it to stick. Is there some kind of trick with it?
I will show you a trick towards the end. But if it's not sticking, you're probably adding, and actually let's just do the bottom, just so I can show you guys. So if I'm going to do the bottom of this wig, first of all, this is gross. There we go. So I'm going to take some hair, but I'm not taking a lot. If the hair is falling down, you're probably not using either enough glue or you're trying to put too much hair up. I only want just enough hair to cover that ugliness, so this is more than enough. If I take this big old chunk of hair right here, and I try and stick it up here, I'll got to be here, and I'll got to be here, and all of the hair in the middle has not gotten any glue on it, and so it's going to fall down. And so a lot of times the hair falling is the result of using too much at once. Now I can take a little bit, glue it, and then take a little bit more and glue it, but a big chunk is going to be a big problem, so I'm betting that might be their issue. But I'll take a little bit of hair, just a little bit, maybe about this much. And then got to be, the bottom is the hardest though. Stick it up, see I took too much hair. There we go. Yeah, you need to make sure that the glue is stuck through to all of it. It's part of the key. We're not going to do a great job with this just because I'm going super fast like Sonic. But another lesson is to always take your time, honestly. Like, we can do this in 30 minutes, but it would look a lot better if I took 2 hours to do it. So patience with wigs is also a really nice thing. I used to not be patient at all. I used to use hot glue for everything. Which you can. Just doesn't look as good. All right, so we're almost done with this. Just one more laying hair on here, kind of guiding it where we want it to go. And then again, spraying the top, and then hardening it. All right.
When you see about this, especially on this large spike wigs like UBO or rainbow, that they get this sort of plastic-like look, how would you avoid something like that? With the spikes that still natural, kind of.
So the plastic look is a lot of times the result of too much glue. I've kind of done that here. A little too much glue right here, it's a little shiny. Right here, there's not as much glue, and so it's not as shiny. Another symptom of too much glue is, you see how the hair is separating a little bit right here? That means I've oversaturated it a tiny bit. So be careful with the glue is one thing I would say. The other thing is if you don't like that shiny texture, like even the parts that are not super saturated are a little shiny, starting with a matte wig helps a lot. Unfortunately, that is Arda. Or there is another brand called Lucao. They are a Asian seller, and they sell a lot of this kind of matte fiber wig. That will reduce the shininess because the hair is just not shiny to start with. So I would, honestly, that's probably the easiest way to avoid it. So we're not going to totally finish this up, just for the sake of time, but we can kind of see where we have covered most of the structure. And we can still see a little ugliness for her hair, but you get the idea. We're going to cover up all of the yuckiness with our nice, pretty hair. Now for the tip, there's a trick that I like to use, which is using a clear kind of glue. I'm in love with Patex. Y'all are lucky, because I can't buy this in the United States. So enjoy your wonderful glue. But really, any kind, yeah, we tried to buy it and we couldn't find any, but that's okay. I know, it's so sad. Any kind of clear glue will work just fine though. Tacky glue is also fine, but the key is you want some kind of permanent clear glue. And what I like to do, if I can get the glue out of here, come on, what's up?
Common problem.
Yeah, I don't know what's going on here. Come on out. Come on out. There you go. Get out of here. Okay, I got it. I did it. I can squeeze a tube. What I like to do is I like to put this on the tip of the wig. And this works with a spiked style. This does not work with, obviously, non-spikes, but if you can, this is too long, but there we go. And then once that's dry, just trim off the little that's on here. But the nice thing about this is when this dries, unlike this, which falls out over time, this is permanent. And when the tip is completely locked into place, and obviously this is locked into place, it's attached to the wig, it's a lot harder for this middle area to fall out because it's pinned between these two things. And this makes this style so much more permanent. You can drop it on the floor and it will probably still be okay. Like, you know, don't stomp on the wig, obviously. But I love doing this because I think it makes the styles last so much longer, and it'll probably also help with your friend's problem of the hair falling out over time, because this is permanent. I love doing that. I think that's a fun little trick to use. But this is how I do my big shapes and my big spiking. Anyone have any other questions about this technique in general? Any kind of applications you're thinking of using, like any characters, or anything that's confusing before we move on to foam? No? Y'all kidding? Really? Okay. Yes.
Actually, I have another project in planning where I am using a traditional Chinese hairstyle, and they always have this kind of knot in the back of the head. I was thinking about using foam and just covering it up with hair, but I doubt it would look as traditional as I would like.
Yeah. So anytime you want a big shape, but you want it to look very natural or very organic or almost fluffy, is what I like to call it. I like this kind of understructure. You can ultimately use whatever understructure you want. You could use foam for this. You could cut a chunk of foam out and cover it with hair. It's really what you are comfortable with. There's not a wrong way to do it. I personally just think it looks fluffier. So if you wanted to make the inside out of hair, I think that is a perfectly great idea. But if someone else is more comfortable with foam, that's also great as well. I do think that this looks a little fluffier and a little more natural looking than something like this. What I like to use foam on is something that is really slick, really clean. So like this kind of style where it's very flat, and it's very flat up here. That is what I like to use foam a lot for. Because when we apply the hair over the foam, we're really flattening it and we're making it really straight and stiff. And I say foam very loosely. An understructure made out of foam can really be made out of anything. We can make it out of stiffened felt like this. I've seen people use chicken wire. I don't know why you would do that, but people have done it. You can use styrofoam is my personal favorite. I like using that a lot. This is actually made out of poster board. Just a sheet of poster board that I laid the hair on top of. So we're really talking about anything, any kind of understructure that is not hair is what we're going to go into next. And I'm going to leave this here. So like if I were to want to make a spike like this out of foam or felt in this case, I can take my little shape. I would make it in the shape I want it to be. So I can look at this and I know my hair is going to end up in a cone shape because that's what this looks like. It's cone. I could take a styrofoam shape that looks like this, and this is what the hair would end up like. So make your understructure the right shape, and then what we would do is we would lay our hair right on top of that foam shape. And I'm just going to kind of show you with my hands, and I'm going to actually do this right now on the wig. But you know, we would end up with the hair going off in this direction around this foam shape. It would look very slick, the way that this does, and it would be very stiff. This wags around a little bit. This is fluffy and organic. This is a very stiff, firm shape. The nice thing about these are that they are very structurally sound because the entire piece of hair is going to be coated in glue. So it's very, very secure. It's also very flat. It requires a lot less hair than this because we don't need to tease up that middle. And we can also make really crazy shapes with it. There's kind of a maximum to what you can do with teasing. If I want something this big, there's no way we can tease that. We have to use foam. We have to use drill curls or tape or something like that. Or if I want a shape that's really, really thin and goes off, like I want a big, something like this that's really thin, you can't do that with teasing. It's too thin. We can't get enough hair in there. That's also got to be foam. So you can do literally anything with foam that you can't necessarily do with this. When I cover things with foam, actually I'm gonna, do I have scissors? No, I don't have scissors. All right, well I'm gonna steal, actually do we have a pair of scissors here? If not, I can, do we have any scissors by any chance? Yeah. That's all right. I'll steal some wefts off of this bad boy. That's all right. No problem. I will just rob my wig of some wefts using my de-wefting method. So when we cover foam, you always want to use some kind of clear glue. This can be Patex, which again, y'all are lucky. I gotta buy this from Korea. This can be Patex, which I love. A lot of people in America use watered down tacky glue. That's actually what this is made out of. Tacky glue is a little thick. I don't know why I'm telling y'all this, just use Patex. But if you wanted to use any other kind of clear glue, that's perfectly fine as well. When I use this, the key, unlike with the Got to Be, is we need to cover every fiber because we want every fiber stuck down with the glue. That's what makes it really slick, and that's what's going to keep any hairs from popping up out of it. One thing I've actually been doing with this is not using any understructure at all. If you just swipe the glue through the hair, again, make sure we cover all of it. And we can comb it a little bit. This is just going to dry in this shape. And maybe I will lay it on top of foam or on top of this cone thing, and that's the direction it's going to go in. Or I could even just leave it by itself. I've made little tiny dragon spikes with this, and if you just let it dry, this is the shape that it's going to be in when it's completely set. There we go. Come on. Yeah. This is going to dry like this, and this is going to be permanent. So if I want to stick this in my wig as cool little spots, if you guys can look and see these green things, there's no understructure under here. This is just glue in the hair, and this is the way it dries. So this is a really fun technique to do weird kind of curly cues like this. The main thing you'll probably use this for is laying it on top of the understructure. So again, I usually start by putting glue on the understructure itself. And then I will take very little hair. You don't want a huge chunk of hair because we need to put the glue through every single fiber. And if I start with a big old chunk, there's no way I can get all this hair inside the middle. So we have to go slow and do it in layers. So we're gonna dot the glue on like this. We're gonna dot it on the other side as well. Smoosh it on through. If you've got too much, that's fine. It's way better to have too much than too little, because who cares how nasty your hands get? I don't care. Put that on the ground. And then we're going to stick it where we put down our glue on here. And we're going to just lay that there. See, I did a bad job, but that's okay because I'm not going to touch it. I don't care that I did a bad job. And the reason I'm not going to touch it is because this has already begun to dry. And if it's starting to dry and I go, oh no, I want to fix it, don't do it. Because you're going to end up with these little white pills as the glue has begun to dry. And if you touch it, you're going to get all this white, nasty on your hair. Instead, say, well, I messed up, but that's all right. I'm going to be patient and wait for it to dry, and I'm going to take more hair and put it on top. It's way better to just continue layering than to mess with it. So you can even do it before it's totally dry. That's all right. I'm going to take this, and I'm going to do it again. I'm going to put that glue on through. It's a little too much hair, but that's all right. And then put it on the other side. This is a very messy process, by the way. This is why I say this is a little harder than doing this spike, because you have to be very clean with it, and you have to be very patient with it. But if you are clean and patient, anyone can do it. And then we're going to lay it right on top of the hair that I messed up. There we go. So here we are. So then we will just continue this process all the way around the cone until we have a cool hair cone that I can then stick on the wig. Yes?
Excuse me, how would you fix that cone onto the wig when you're finished?
So usually what I will do, so the question is, how do I get this on the wig? A lot of times I will think about where it's going and if the edges are hidden. If it's possible, I will often put it on first. A lot of times, if I was to take this and hot glue it and just go stick it on like that, that's not going to be good because this hair is loose. And as this hair moves, this thing's going to move around and that's going to look weird. So what I instead want to do is I want to affix it to the net of the wig, the thing that all this hair is attached to. So, come here, get on off. This guy. This is the ideal place to affix understructure because this is solid, it's a solid net, it doesn't move around. If you need to affix your understructure further down the wig, it's tougher because these are elastic and these move and there's not a lot of surface area to stick it to. If I need to stick it further down, what I will often do is I will take a piece of felt and I will say, well, I need a cone right here, and so I will take a piece of felt and I will glue it right here. Maybe hot glue. I'm lazy, again, I'm a lazy person. I will use hot glue whenever I can. You can stitch it on if you want to be a good person, but hot glue is also fine, whatever. I'm not judging y'all. It's fine, it's just cosplay. Don't kill yourselves. So the felt gives you more surface area to glue onto, and it's not stretchy anymore. And so once that felt is on there, I will also sometimes remove the hair in that area because even if I have my felt, or even if I'm putting it on the top, having to go, oh God, and separate the hair, and I'm going to try and put it right here, that's a pain. Instead, I will pull the hair off with a seam ripper and expose a little area of the netting or of that felt that I've added. And once it is totally exposed, then I will glue that thing on. I try to start, 10 minutes. I, a lot of times, try and put the structure on and then I add my hair. It is possible for you to do this and then stick it on. That's totally fine as well. Like if I have an adango or I have a little bun, I think doing the bun first makes a lot of sense because you need to access the bottom of the hair. Yes?
Because I'm actually working on a Book Academy wig right now from a student May, and she has these unnatural big dreads, and I used wire inside, covered it with foam, and then used the hair on foam. So would it be possible to do the wires in the wig and fix them inside?
So, so the question is, it's a big dread.
No, she has more. She has several dreads, like 15.
Okay. So for each dread.
Yeah.
So, got it. So for a style with lots and lots of really big dreads that you need foam for, how to affix that. How are you putting the hair on? Because there's a couple ways I can think of to do it. One way to attach hair to foam is, so ignore this is ugly. We can glue the hair to the bottom and then wrap it around the top, kind of like what's happening here. This would be like a cone structure. The ugly end would be here and then would go all the way out here. So that's one way to do it. And if we attach hair in that method, we have to have this in our hands first. We can't start with it on the wig because how are you going to get the hair under the thing that's already on the wig? We have to glue it on first and then attach it to the wig after the fact. So that's one way to do it because we have to access the bottom. The other way to do it, depending on how you attach the hair.
No, I did it.
Oh, you did it like that? Okay, cool. So in that case, you have to access it first. So I would make the whole dread all by itself, and then I would go over to my wig, push the wire up through the inside, and then attach it like that. I think wire is a great idea. For really heavy wigs like that, distributing the weight throughout the wig, either with wire or y'all can go back to the Homestuck days and use headbands underneath like we used to. That's another great way to distribute the weight. But you have to make the dread first in order to access the inside. Another way, just depending on how you're making your structure, is if you say, no, I don't like to wrap the hair like that. I want to wrap the hair like this and have it go around in this particular direction. In that case, you don't have to access the bottom. And so it's really up to you if you want to make the dread first and then stick it on, or you start with it stuck on here and then you wrap the hair. I personally tend to make my objects separately. For this particular wig, I made it separately and then stuck it on. It just really depends on your preference. If you ever have a structure where, let's say this is a cone and we want the hair to come up from the base wig. So we want this to look like a natural spike where the hair is swept up into the spike like this. It's not just a dread that we've stuck on the wig that looks totally different, or a flower that we've just stuck on the wig. Something where the hair is drawn up into the shape. This makes a lot of sense to stick my shape on first, because I need to cover it with the hair that's on the wig. And so in this case, I want to glue my structure on before I start to cover it with my hair. Does that make sense, guys? Cool. I know that was like a really long answer, but yeah. Okay. Awesome. Anyone have any questions about like basics of foam work? It does take a little while to do, which is why I haven't done a full demo. This guy, we didn't do a great job, but we did it in 30 minutes. This is what we did in like however long it took us to do it. So this is a more advanced technique. It's a more time-intensive technique, but it's very, very clean if you have the time to do it. Yes?
Just one question, what kind of foam are you using for the wig?
You can really use, so what kind of foam do you use for foam work? The answer is honestly whatever you are comfortable with. I would just make sure that it is something that's sturdy, something that you are comfortable with using, and beyond that, you can use anything as long as it's lightweight. My personal favorite is styrofoam. I'm just very comfortable with carving, so I can make weird, twisty shapes like this very easily. The other thing that I think I mentioned this wig is actually poster board. So this is just heavy construction poster board that I used. And this actually turned out really great because the glue soaked into the poster board. And so for a weird shape like this, it worked really, really well. When you work with foam and glue, I would also maybe lay down a little bit of wax paper. I think that'll help keep your station clean. But yeah, beyond that, it's whatever you're comfortable with. For styrofoam or expanding foam, I will also sometimes lay a little bit of felt on top of it. So like the kind of, not the stiff felt like this, the soft felt. I think it has a little bit of a better grip. I sometimes have trouble getting the first layer of hair on the styrofoam. So a little bit of felt helps. Or if you're really, really struggling, honestly, try poster board. Like I was really pleased with like how easy it was to use. So for a beginner project, yeah, just go with whatever you're comfortable with and whatever is sticky as well. Other foam work questions, because we only have about 5 minutes left. So really, I think we can use this time for any kind of Q&A or extra questions we have, or even if you guys have questions about any wig projects that I have made in the past too. Yes?
Is that classic Patex or is it a special Patex?
So this is from Korea. So this thing says Patex Contact Transparent, and I think we determined that it was was it the classic or the gel? Is it the classic? Not classic?
The classic is
No, it's not a classic.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Clear, whatever is clear. It's a clear gel, and I think when we were at we were trying to find some at the store today, and I think, I think it's the gel, but make sure that it's the clear one. It's got to be clear. If it's yellow, it's no good.
Lidl has them sometimes.
Yeah, what was the store you were saying had a bunch of
It's
it?
the store we were called Müller,
Uh-huh.
but I think you can also try Obi or something.
Yeah, there's another
Yeah.
brand here. We have no clear glue. We have no clear glue. We have tacky glue.
Yeah.
It's not clear, and it's yuck. Do not recommend. Yes.
There's actually another trademark. It's Google.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
there's
yeah.
We also saw that one.
transparent. They're selling transparent one. It even says transparent, and it's the same basically.
Mm-hmm. How do you spell it? Woohoo. Okay.
UHU.
UHU.
It's
All
like
right.
the all thing.
Gotcha.
that's living in the mountains.
Yeah, and so,
It was the brand Psychopatics one.
gotcha. Yeah, anything that's like clear, gel-like is very good. Or again, tacky glue, but make sure you water it down. This is tacky glue. Actually, Scone, come on up here. So this wig is tacky glue, and it can, wow, thank you. Come on up. You're right. Oh, okay, or up here, that's cool too. No, that's fine. And then this one is Patex. And so this is actually the technique here. Come on this way. So this is kind of the technique we were talking about earlier, where we just swipe the glue through without any understructure at all, and it holds its shape. It's great for using spikes like this. These things are not going anywhere, and there's no understructure here. So this is just a really fun thing you can do. And then this is a better example of our teased up spikes. These are actually too small to use our technique of laying the smooth hair on top. When you have lots of little spikes like this, it's really hard to set aside the hair for later just because they're covering the whole wig. And so in this case, it behooves you to try to not tease as much. If I'm making something like this, I want to make sure that I add lots of wefts, because the more wefts I add, the less I need to tease, and so the less tangled this is going to look. Just because we can't set aside our nice hair like we did for a big thing like this. All right, thank you. Oh, okay, yeah, you can sit, that's cool. No, that's my stuff. Don't sit on my stuff. Fine. Well, we've only got like 2 minutes left anyway. All right, I think we'll probably have like 2 more questions, if anyone has any. No, or not? That's cool. Oh, yes. Hi.
Yeah, I would soon start with a wig that has a really gigantic and spiky ponytail. And yeah, do you have any tips for securing heavy wigs like that to your head?
Yes. So for a big wig with a spiky ponytail, the higher you can go, the more structurally stable it will be. So the higher you can get it, the more center it is on your head, the happier you're going to be. If you can't, if it needs to be back, or maybe you've got something long in the back, what you want to try and do is distribute the weight. If it's just back here, it's pulling on the back of your wig, and that's no fun. Sometimes with a ponytail, you can have, kind of like what we were talking about earlier with the wire. If you have a wire or you have some other structure coming up out of it, and then you've got a brace underneath. So a brace can be either something that goes around your whole head, or it can just honestly be even a headband, but just some kind of brace attached to this top thing that goes underneath your wig. I will sometimes make them out of Warbler, or you can use anything like Wonderflex, any kind of hard structure. If you find me tomorrow, I'm wearing a big set of Loki horns, and I've got a brace, and I will show you my brace if you hunt me down tomorrow. Okay. But the key is to distribute the weight of the wig. Brace is a wonderful way to do that. Another way to do that is to sew little toupee clips into the front of the wig, and then the wig will grip the front. You also want to take hairpins. So if anyone has ever used the hairpins that are kind of like these, not bobby pins, for many years I said, what are these shitty bobby pins? And I threw them away. Don't do that. Put them in your head. Because what those do is you stick them in and it keeps the wig from rolling backwards. So that is another way to distribute it. If you put the hairpins all over your head, that's a distribution all over your head of the weight. And so that will help a lot. Yes?
Yeah, I use bobby pins a lot, really a lot. But I still have the issues. For example, I was cosplaying a character of Saturday Online, and she had a lot of small ponytails just in the back. And every time it still pulls the wig with my wig cap and with my hair back, and it always went up. So I don't know.
Are you using bobby pins or hairpins?
Those bobby pins, I even looked them up.
So the bobby pins are stuck like this, the hairpin is like this.
No bobby pins.
This one?
Yeah.
Look into the hairpins, the ones that are like this. The idea is if you, yeah, so if you curl up your hair, your real hair, if you curl it up or braid it, and then put your wig cap on, and then put your wig on. If you put the hairpin in like, boop, And then it opens up like this.
Into your hair.
The idea,
and then let it open.
yeah, the idea is that it's caught in your wig cap and the twists of your hair, and as this tries to pull back, it won't because the hairpin is open like this.
Okay.
Go onto YouTube and Google using hairpins. I've actually got a video on my Tumblr that a friend of mine made, but there's lots of YouTube videos on how to use those hairpins. I've actually swam underwater in a wig and it didn't come off using hairpins. So toupee clips will also help you a lot if you sew those toupee clips in.
They're little combs,
Yes.
and they open and close.
Yeah,
Yes. Yes. And I think we are just about done. If anyone has other questions, we're going to be at our booth tomorrow at 3, and I believe on Sunday at 3:15. You know, absolutely come by, ask any kind of wig questions you guys have. We also have free mini tutorials for anyone who wants some wig styling stuff. And then we also have a bunch of tutorials on our social media on Facebook and Instagram and Patreon if anyone wants. On our Patreon, we actually donate everything to cat rescues, but we also have a lot of free tutorials on wigs on there as well. But yeah, I hope you guys learned stuff, and let me know if you all have any questions later. Thank you so much for coming.
thank you.